Chapter 5. A Severe Plan. The Zubat bit and gnawed at the crack in the wall, his teeth sore from the labor. He sighed and flapped a few feet away from his work. The Zubat had been working at this all day, and he hardly had any progress to show for it. There must be an easier way, he thought. He flew a little closer, inspecting the wall from several angles. The plan was good, except for one little detail. A Zubat was poorly equipped to execute it. Not for the first time, the Zubat wished he was born a different breed of Pokemon. But alas, this was the hand he'd been dealt, and he intended to play it to the end, even if it led to ruin. Oh, if only I was a Pokemon that could break rock, he mused. A Water-type Pokemon could erode it until the wall weakened, or... A sound echoed through the cave. It was a long ways off, but the Zubat knew this cavern better than anyone. In his mind's eye, he could tell exactly where the sound came from. A moving point marked on a mental map. Curious, the Zubat put his project on hold to see what else had intruded in his cave. For the last time, an Ivysaur grumbled, we are not lost. A Beedrill rolled her eyes behind the Ivysaur. If you don't know where you are going, you're lost. This isn't lost, the Ivysaur insisted. This is familiarizing myself with the environment. Now if you will stop distracting me, I need to concentrate. Let him be, Hannah, whimpered a Kakuna. The sooner we get to the other side of Mount Moon, the better. I can't wait to rest in Cerulean City. The female Beedrill carried the Kakuna around, following the Ivysaur. Behind all of them was a trainer wielding a flashlight. The kid seemed to be letting his Pokemon navigate. The Zubat watched all of this from around the next bend. Okay, watched wasn't accurate, seeing as all Zubat are blind. But he listened, and his mind translated the sounds into a clear, if colorless, picture. This allowed the Zubat to stay well outside their limited vision and keep close tabs on what these newcomers were doing. It took all the Zubat had not to chuckle. They were trying to get to the other side of Mount Moon? That was ridiculous. Although there were many small and secret entrances to Mount Moon, trainers passing through were either from Pewter City headed to Cerulean or vice versa. And if this bunch was headed for Cerulean City, logically they had departed from Pewter. Also, from the irritation in their voices, it was clear this hike through the mountain had already lasted some time. Which was hilarious. They were basically right next to the entrance they came through. The Zubat could picture it now. They must have veered left upon entering, then taken a circular path that crisscrossed over each other several times. Mount Moon was easy to get lost in if you didn't know the way. Despite the Ivysaur's insistence, this group was definitely lost. Wait a minute. An Ivysaur. The Zubat had an idea. Take a right. All three of the Pokemon jumped in surprise, and this time the Zubat really did chuckle. He couldn't resist. The looks of shock on their faces at his sudden statement was just too good. Who's there? Said the Kakuna. Shut up, the Ivysaur shouted. You don't speak for this group, I speak for this group. He cleared his throat. Who's there? Is there an echo in here? The Zubat said. He flapped lower, intentionally falling into the narrow view of their flashlight. Might as well have let the Kakuna say his piece. The Ivysaur snarled. It's just another Zubat. This cave is crawling with them. I'll take care of it, said the Beedrill with a grin. No way! You're not touching another Pokemon, you hear me? Said the Ivysaur. The Zubat leisurely flew to a nearby stalactite and hung upside down from his thin legs. Oh, no need for talk like that, he said. I'm not here to fight, and I'm not like the other Zubat you've met. The Ivysaur raised an eyebrow, his stance softening a touch. You sure don't talk like any Zubat I've ever seen. You have my attention. What do you want? An exchange, said the Zubat. I'll help you with something you need, so long as you help me with something. The Ivysaur considered this. How do I know I can trust you? Good point, the Zubat thought. Clearly, this Ivysaur was the intellectual leader of the group, and judging from his demeanor towards his comrades, he likely had trust issues. Still, if the Zubat wanted to pull off his mission, he would need his help, and the sooner, the better. An idea came to him. Oh, and what a brilliant idea it was. Here's how you can trust me, said the Zubat. Then he flew down from his perch, past the Pokemon, and straight for their trainer. The kid looked surprised and batted at the Zubat with his hand. The Ivysaur immediately became defensive. Don't you dare hurt him, he shouted. Yet again, the Zubat wished he was another kind of Pokemon. One with eyes, preferably. Because if he had eyes, he would have given the Ivysaur a wink just then. Oh, far from it, my friend. The Zubat knocked an empty Pokeball off the trainer's belt. When it hit the rocky floor, the Zubat dived for it. His forehead hit the button at the center, and in a flash, he was inside the little world within. So you really know the way through here? Neville asked. Of course, the Zubat replied. I know this cave like the inside of my ear. I can get you out in no time, which is good because once my plan is finished, we won't be sticking around. Slughorn looked intrigued. And what exactly is your plan, Severus? Severus. That would take getting used to. He still didn't think of himself by that name. Of course, he didn't think of himself with any name. It was good, though. He liked having his own identity. Oh, it's simple enough, Severus explained. There used to be far more tunnels through here than there are now. Throughout the ages, some have collapsed while others form. There's one particular collapsed tunnel that slopes down from higher up that used to be like a slide into many of the central chambers. It caved in long before my time, causing an avalanche of boulders. Many Pokemon were hurt or died then. It would have continued for much longer, but a few rocks of just the right size clumped up in the tunnel, sealing off many, many more above. Over the years, that blockage smoothed out until it became a wall on its own. Slughorn looked impressed. How did you learn all of this? Surely you aren't old enough to remember it all yourself. Of course not, Severus agreed. And most Zubat wouldn't even care. But I make conversation with Geodudes from time to time, and if there's one thing a Geodude loves, it's earthen history. They could talk for days about the history of this mountain's stony past, changing at such a slow pace no one else sees it. They told me all about it. So what precisely does any of this have to do with us? Said Hannah. She was fidgety and impatient. If I wanted a boring history lesson, I would have just asked a Geodude myself. Severus nodded. He may have earned a degree of trust from Slughorn by letting himself be captured, but the same was not true of Hannah. She gave him an annoyed attitude from the get-go, as if his arrival interrupted some plan of her own. Never the matter. It was Slughorn he needed. Come on, he said. I'll show you. The four Pokemon stood at the edge of an interior cliff. It overlooked a large rocky chamber within the cave. The others didn't need a Zubat sonar to see what was below. There were enough floodlights scattered through this area to simulate daylight. Severus was blind, but he did have a basic sense of light. Enough to know if the sun is out so he can retreat to darker places. Filling his cave with light was like coming to your house to find it ransacked. Who are they? Slughorn asked, nodding towards the people working below. Bad men, said Severus. Very bad men. He turned towards Hannah. You asked what that history lesson had to do with us. As I said, it's simple. We're going to break that wall, open the floodgates, and bring forth an avalanche on these intruders. That tunnel slopes straight into this chamber, and will rain boulders and dirt on this scum. Neville the Kakuna shivered. That's horrible! Why would you do such a thing? Severus clenched his jaw. Because they killed my sister. Just down there. Swatted her away like she didn't mean a thing. I buried her nearby. And now I will bury them with her.